How do we get trapped in the mind prison? Well, if you rewind the tape several years, a few decades, there was a time when you were a child, when you began to notice thoughts. You were aware of that internal experience. And usually at some point we learn to use it as a pacifier. We learn to engage that thought world to make ourselves feel better. But at some point it starts to feel uncomfortable. We almost feel stuck, like trapped in thought. Or we feel a strong reaction to a certain thought that is uncomfortable, scary, fearful. This is just the natural ebb and flow of thought and consciousness when we're introducing will. There's the push and the pull. There's the desire and the aversion. And they come like the peak and trough of a wave. But when we first start building an internal world, we don't realize this mechanism, this dynamic, until it's kind of got us. And we start to fear this place in thought. And then we start to build identities to avoid even seeing it. We build identities to avoid the experience of helplessness inside thought, inside consciousness. At the same time, we begin to take our thoughts for reality. We begin to take our internal reflections of what's happening for what's actually happening. So this setup causes a binding. And the binding is endless hide and seek. We're hiding from ourselves the truth that we're terrified of the feeling of helplessness. And then to avoid seeing that, we endlessly seek. But what we're seeking is imagined. We imagine things to be different than they actually are. And then we endlessly seek those possibilities. And the more we get lost in this jungle of desire, aversion, seeking, arriving, the more distanced we actually feel from reality. It feels uncomfortable, but we don't often know what the source of that discomfort is. This is what I call suffering. So the mechanism that got started very early in life and has now grown into a monster is based in something very simple. And that's a misperception of the nature of helplessness. To the mind, helplessness is deeply fearful. But the mind is only a reflection. What the mind is reflecting when it perceives helplessness is naturalness. In the natural world, everything is helpless because nothing acts independently. Nothing exists independently. There aren't separate entities that can pick and choose their destiny. There's no agency in that way. But the thinking process never wants to see this because the moment it's seen, the entire thinking process is rendered inert. And you lose interest in it pretty rapidly when you realize it's never gotten anywhere and it's never getting anywhere. It just imagines things to chase and then it chases them internally. But the external world, the actual, is clear, pristine, without form, without separation, without agency, without anything acting upon anything else. The simplicity and innocence of this is astounding. But the mind can't get a hold of it, never will. It can't touch into this. It can only reflect, and the reflection is inaccurate. And the inaccuracies include agency, solidity, separation. So to hear accurately is just hearing. There's no agent. There's no receiver of hearing. There's only hearing. To see accurately, there is only seeing. There is only the seen. There isn't anyone seeing that. There's no receiver, no perceiver, no awareness. Just the miraculous visual display. It's intimate, warm. It's home. It excludes nothing. There's no outside. Nothing is sought. Nothing is missing. So the two ways we dispel this illusion is one, to see directly the illusory nature of thought. And part of that is to see that introducing will in consciousness and thought just stirs the pot. So we learn to rest. We learn a certain neutrality. This can be accomplished in many ways. And second, we learn the nature of unfiltered reality from unfiltered reality itself. And you have 5 sense gates through which to do that. This isn't the kind of learning where you take notes. It's not a learning of a process. It's not a learning of language. It's not a learning of becoming or getting somewhere. It's the rawness of reality itself. And this gets quite paradoxical because this learning is a surrender. It's a inheriting of what's left when all remnants of self-structure fall away. It's reality knowing itself, but it knows itself by being itself. And it's not some solid entity or infinite presence or formless awareness. It's just the sound. It's the sensation in your hands. It's the feeling in your chest. Nothing more, nothing less. There's no background receiving that or knowing that. There's no awareness in which that occurs. There's no negation of a sensation. There's no negation of a sound. Just sound, just sensation.